They hung a Whitaker Legacy Party banner in my lobby. They were measuring rooms with lasers. I was preparing court orders. They raised champagne glasses to their new lives in my building. I raised an injunction. They thought it was a celebration. I turned it into their eviction notice. By 9 p.m., the only person on the microphone was the court marshal shutting the whole thing down. My name is Nora Chavez. On a quiet Sunday, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I was in my office reviewing tenant applications. This was my sanctuary, the nerve center of Northline Urban Works LLC, a company I built from grant applications and late-night drywall dust. I own 100% of it. On the wall opposite my desk, a framed balance sheet showed our assets, clean and stark. The top line item, the one that made me breathe easier, was 235 Harbor Avenue, a $2.3 million commercial building, the crown jewel of my portfolio. The office was still. The only sounds were the low, steady hum of the building's new air conditioning system and the rhythmic tap of my pen against the polished concrete floor. It was a sound like a clock, counting down, though I did not know to what. I was 37 years old, and I had spent the last decade building this, not inheriting it, not being given it, building it. The applications in front of me were for the last 2 commercial spaces. A bakery run by 2 sisters, a small graphic design firm, good tenants, solid. My phone vibrated on the desk, a sharp buzz that cut the quiet. It was Riley Cortez, my best friend, and the only person I trusted to run operations. The text was 6 words. You need to check the family group chat. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my bloodstream. The Whitaker family chat was a place I usually muted. A stream of political memes from uncles and blurry photos of my sister's kids. I tapped it open. The world tilted. The first image was my mother, Evelyn. She was standing in the middle of the penthouse at 235 Harbor Avenue. My penthouse, the one I had just finished designing. The one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. Her arms were spread wide, a grotesque parody of a queen welcoming her court. Her smile was blinding. I scrolled. The next was a video. My older brother, Mason, was sighting down the wall of the 3rd-floor executive suite. He was holding a laser measure, the red dot bright against the fresh paint. I could hear his voice, muffled. This corner gives the best light, perfect for the studio. The next photos were a blur of motion. My younger sister, Haley, sitting on the polished concrete floor of the 2nd-floor lobby while her 3 children, my nieces and nephew, ran screaming down the hallway. They had snacks. There were crumbs on the floor I had personally seen polished 3 days ago. Then the text, a caption from my mother, under the photo of her in the penthouse. Figured out a fair and equitable split of the Whitaker legacy. So proud of what we've all built. My thumb froze. Whitaker Legacy. My company was Northline Urban Works. My name is Chavez. Whitaker was my mother's maiden name. The name she clung to. The name of a grandfather who left his children nothing but debts and a pretentious signet ring. A new message popped up. It was from Mason. It was a list. The split. Mom and Dad. Penthouse, obviously Mason floor 3, studio office Haley. Floor 2. For the kids, plus rental income. Nora ground floor temp office space, since she has her other office. I read it 3 times. Temp office space. In my building, they were assigning me the ground floor of the $2.3 million asset I had acquired, financed, and renovated with my own capital and my own credit. My heart was no longer tapping. It was hammering, a frantic, trapped bird against my ribs. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly in the empty room. They have no legal standing, I whispered the words to the balance sheet on the wall. They have no standing. My fingers were shaking, but I hit the call button for Noah Pike, my building manager. He was a good man, retired military, ruthlessly efficient. He answered on the 2nd ring. Noah, it is Nora Chavez. I need a status report on 235 Harbor Avenue. Ms. Chavez, Sunday. Everything is fine, ma'am. Quiet. Noah, is my family in the building? The silence on the other end was heavy, absolute. It was the answer. Noah, my voice was ice. How did they get in? Ms. Chavez, your mother, Evelyn, she came by this morning. His voice was tight, suddenly defensive. She had the paperwork. She said you were all meeting to designate spaces. She had the old co-founder documents. It looked official. It had your name and her name. I thought, you thought what? Noah? I thought it was valid, he finished, his voice small. The floor seemed to drop. The old co-founder documents, I knew exactly what he meant. The memory was instant, sharp as broken glass. 8 years ago, I was trying to secure my first small commercial loan. I had the business plan, I had the projections, but I had no credit history under the LLC. The bank wanted a co-signer on a small $15,000 line of credit. Just to start, I had asked my mother. She had signed. I paid that loan back. I paid it back in 6 months, with interest. And the day the bank sent the release, I drove to my parents' house with a notary. I sat at their kitchen table. I explained, clearly, that her co-signature was a temporary bridge and that for me to grow, the company structure had to be clean. She had to be removed. She signed the release. She signed the corporate amendment removing her as a temporary member. I watched the notary stamp the paper. I have the original, filed. I have the copies, digitized and backed up. It was 8 years ago. It was final. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a nostalgic family getting carried away. This was a planned, structured, and deliberate attempt to seize my property. My mother had kept a copy of a long voided document and used it, knowing it was fraudulent, to gain access. Mason with his laser measure, Haley with her children, my mother in my home. This was an invasion. The shock evaporated. A cold, clear focus replaced it. I sat back down. My hand was steady now. I pulled up my contacts and found the name I paid a significant retainer for, the name I hoped I would only need for acquisitions and contracts. Dahlia Trent. She answered, her voice crisp as a new dollar bill. Nora, trouble. Dahlia, I have a situation at Harbor Avenue. I did not yell. I did not cry. I gave her the facts. My family is occupying the building under the pretense of ownership. They are using fraudulent 8-year-old incorporation documents that were superseded and notarized. Dahlia was quiet for a moment. How many? My mother, father, brother, sister, and 3 children, and I glanced at the group chat again. It looks like they are planning a party. They are calling it a legacy dinner. Understood, Dahlia said. The steel in her voice was comforting. What do you need? Bring the updated articles of organization, the ones from 2 years ago showing me as sole member. Bring the executed amendment schedule showing Evelyn's removal, the one with the notary's signature. Bring the hard copy of the deed for 235 Harbor Avenue, the one where Northline Urban Works is the sole grantee. I took a breath. Meet me at the building. Now. I hung up. I looked at the pen still on my desk. The countdown was over. The 10-minute drive was silent. I did not turn on the radio, did not check my messages. I focused on the rhythm of my breathing, the grip of my hands on the wheel. Emotion was a liability. Focus was a weapon. The stabilization was necessary, because the site of the parking lot at 235 Harbor Avenue was designed to provoke a reaction. It was full. My designated owner's spot was occupied by my brother Mason's oversized Ram truck, the one he leased but spoke of as an asset. Parked diagonally across 2 spaces, Aunt Clara's white BMW, Uncle Mark's Audi, my father's meticulously clean sedan, a dozen other vehicles I recognized from tense holiday dinners and funerals. This was not a small meeting. This was a summit. This was an occupation. They had hung a poster. It was not taped to the glass. It was a professionally printed vinyl banner, strung between the 2 main steel pillars at the entrance. The Whitaker Legacy Dinner. The font was an arrogant, swirling script. My stomach tightened into a cold knot. The Whitaker Legacy. A fantasy built on my mother's maiden name. A fantasy they were now attempting to finance with my reality. The heavy glass doors slid open with a quiet hiss. The lobby I had designed for its clean lines, its polished concrete, its quiet sophistication, was unrecognizable. Someone had brought in portable uplighting, casting hideous purple glows up the walls. A temporary bar, stocked with high-end liquor I had not authorized, was set up near the mailboxes. The air, which should have smelled of new paint and curing polish, was thick with expensive perfume and the cloying scent of catered food. And the people, my Uncle Mark, holding a champagne flute, laughing at a volume reserved for impressing strangers. Cousins I had not seen in 2 years were taking selfies by the elevator bay, tagging the building's location. Then I saw him, near the glass-walled conference room, talking to Mason. Was Ron Peterson, my Uncle Mark's friend. Ron was an accountant. He was not celebrating. He was working. He held a leather-bound portfolio and a pen, gesturing with it toward the second-floor stairwell. He was taking notes on a yellow legal pad. He was helping them divide the assets. The premeditation of it, the sheer, calculated audacity, was breathtaking. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a party. This was an audit. It was a hostile takeover dressed in cocktail attire. Ron Peterson looked up, saw me standing in the entrance. He did not look embarrassed. He gave me a tight, professional nod, as if I were a new client he was about to bill. I walked through the center of the lobby, the laughter, the high-pitched chatter, quieted, then resumed, but altered. The air changed. They saw me. They saw the intruder at their party. My mother, Evelyn, was holding court near the elevator bank. She was wearing a new, emerald silk dress. Her hair was perfect. She saw me, and her smile, that brilliant, smooth, camera-ready smile, widened. She glided toward me, a hostess greeting a late-arriving guest. She put her hand on my arm. Her skin was warm, her touch proprietary. "Nora, darling, you are just in time. We are celebrating." I did not move. I did not look at her hand. "Celebrating what, Mother?" "The family, of course," she said, her voice smooth as the silk she was wearing. She gestured expansively at the room, at the people. "This beautiful building, we are all so proud of what you started for us. It is time. Nora, everyone gets a share." Her gaze was bright, challenging. She was daring me to defy her in front of the clan. "A share of what?" I asked. My voice was low, steady. It cut through the music. My father stepped up beside her. He tapped his oak cane on the polished concrete floor. One sharp, definitive thud. It was a sound designed to command. "Do not be selfish, child," he said. His voice was saturated with disappointment, the tone that had worked to make me shrink for 30 years. "This is too much for one person. It is unhealthy. It belongs to the Whitaker name." "My name is Chavez," I said. My voice did not waver. Before my father could respond, Mason bounded over, interrupting. He was clutching a copy of Architectural Digest, the cover folded back to a specific page. He looked energized, excited. He was not acting. He genuinely believed this was his. "Nora, good. You are here. Look at this lighting." He pointed up at the mezzanine. "The third floor is perfect. I was just telling Ron, the eastern exposure gives a soft, diffused light until almost 11 a.m. It is exactly what I need for the studio. The acoustics are solid." He was not asking. He was informing. He was discussing the attributes of the space he had already allocated to himself in my building. He looked at me, waiting for me to be impressed. I looked past him, across the room, standing awkwardly near the catering table. I saw Riley. She was standing alone, her arms crossed, a paper cup of water in her hand. She looked trapped, miserable. Our eyes met. Her expression was a silent scream. "I am sorry. I tried to stop this." I gave her the slightest nod. "It is not your fault." The clear, high-pitched ding of the main elevator arriving at the lobby cut through the room. The doors slid open. Dahlia Trent emerged. She was wearing a charcoal gray suit that was so perfectly tailored it looked like armor. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, immaculate bun. She carried a single, hard-sided charcoal briefcase. She did not look at the lights, the food, or the assembled family. Her gaze scanned the room, found me, and locked. She walked directly to my side. The music seemed to fade. The chatter stopped. My Uncle Mark lowered his champagne glass. My mother's silky smile faltered. Just a fraction. "Who is this?" my father demanded, stepping forward, using his cane as a barrier. Dahlia did not look at him. She placed her briefcase on a low concrete bench, snapping the latches open with two sharp, metallic clicks. "My name is Dahlia Trent," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it projected effortlessly into the stunned silence, crisp and cold. "I am the attorney of record for the legal entity known as Northline Urban Works, LLC." She paused, letting the formal name hang in the air. "A chemical agent displacing the oxygen. Northline Urban Works, LLC," she continued, "is the sole and exclusive owner of the property at 235 Harbor Avenue and the sole member and owner of Northline Urban Works, LLC. She looked directly at my mother. "Is Nora Chavez." She pulled the first document from her case. It was thick, bound with a blue backing. "These are the updated and currently filed articles of organization for the state of Washington, reflecting that sole ownership." She pulled the second document. "This is the executed and notarized corporate amendment from 8 years ago, wherein Ms. Evelyn Whitaker voluntarily surrendered all initial interest in the LLC in exchange for paid consideration." She pulled the third. "And this is the grant deed for this building, recorded with the county, identifying the grantee as Northline Urban Works, LLC, free and clear." She laid them out in a row on the bench, 3 pillars of indisputable fact. "This is a private party," Mason blustered, stepping forward. His face flushed. "You cannot just barge in here with that." "This is not a party," Dahlia replied, her voice lethally calm. "This is an unauthorized gathering on private property, as you are not employees, stakeholders, or tenants. You are, under the law, trespassing." As if summoned by the word, 2 uniformed men entered through the lobby doors. They were not police. They were the private security team I held on contract for the building, the one Dahlia had clearly called from her car. They were large, professional, and their presence immediately changed the geometry of the room. They had body cameras activated, their small red lights blinking. "We have been asked to document all unauthorized individuals present," the first guard said, his voice polite but firm. He looked at my Uncle Mark, who was still holding his glass. "Sir, may I have your name, please?" The entire atmosphere shattered. The performance was over. The script was gone. My mother was the first to recover. Her face, so composed seconds before, crumpled. The silky smile vanished, replaced by a mask of profound, theatrical betrayal. A genuine tear welled in her eye. "Nora." Her voice cracked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are calling. Security on your family, on your mother." That was the new cue. The cousins and aunts, silent and shocked, suddenly raised their phones. The red recording lights blinked on. One by one. They were not filming the documents on the bench. They were not filming Mason's architectural magazine or Ron the accountant, who was now sliding his legal pad back into his portfolio. They were filming me. They were filming the betrayed mother. Evelyn turned to her new audience, playing to the cameras. "I gave her everything," she choked out, a hand to her chest. "I signed that first loan. She would be nothing without me, and she throws me out of her building." "No one is being thrown out at this moment," Dahlia said, stepping between my mother and the cameras. "You are being asked to leave private property." My mother ignored her. She looked only at me, her eyes wet and blazing with accusation. "You are choosing this," she gesturing to the building, to the cold documents, to Dahlia. "You are choosing money over your own blood." The lobby was silent, waiting. The cameras were steady. I looked past the phones, past the shocked faces of my relatives, and directly at my mother. My voice was as cold and clear as the glass walls around us. No, I said. I am choosing ownership. I am not choosing money over family. By 6 a.m. the next morning, the lobby of 235 Harbor Avenue was silent. The lingering scent of my mother's perfume and the catered food from the night before had been scrubbed and ozone out of the air. The purple uplighting was gone. The banner was gone. And the only people present were a team of professional locksmiths I had called before dawn. I stood by the entrance, sipping black coffee from a thermos, watching them work. This was not a simple rekeying. This was an upgrade. Every lock on every door, from the main entrance to the utility closets to the stairwells, was being replaced. The penthouse elevator, which had previously used a key, was being retrofitted with a high-security numerical keypad. So was my office. So was the main server room. By the time the sun was fully up, 235 Harbor Avenue would be a fortress. The only people with access codes would be myself, Riley, and Noah. And Noah's code would be restricted. At 8:01 a.m., I was in my newly secured office. The door clicked shut behind Noah and Riley with the solid, satisfying thud of a new deadbolt. Noah Pike looked like he had not slept. He placed a small sheaf of papers on my desk. "This is what she used, Ms. Chavez," he said. His voice was raw. "This is what I looked at." I picked up the top sheet. It was a printout from the Secretary of State's database. It was the original LLC certificate for Northline Urban Works. From 8 years ago, it listed 2 names, Nora Chavez, member, Evelyn Whitaker, registered agent. "She pointed to this," Noah said, tapping my mother's name. She said, registered agent was the legal term for the co-founding partner. She said she was here to inspect her equity. A registered agent, Noah, is just the person who accepts legal mail on behalf of the company, I said. My voice was flat, devoid of accusation. It was the voice of a CEO identifying a systemic failure. "It has 0 bearing on ownership. 0. "I know that now," he said quietly. "I looked it up after your lawyer left. The second document was a copy of the old EIN application, the tax identification number. It also listed her name. It was another document, official-looking, that meant nothing regarding ownership. It was all expired. It was all superseded." "She was confident," Noah added. "She said you were expecting her, that the whole family was—" "She lied. Noah." I dropped the papers. "This was not a mistake. It was a con. It will not happen again." Riley, who had been silent, slid her tablet across the desk. "It is worse than that. Nora, this was not a spontaneous decision. She had the building's digital access logs open, the real logs, not the fraudulent paper sign-in sheet my mother had probably filled out. They were scouting," Riley said. I looked at the screen. 3 weeks ago, a Sunday Evelyn Whitaker, guest access, service elevator. She had told the weekend security guard, a new contractor, that she was my mother and was checking the fire suppression system in the penthouse. She was inside for 2 hours, 2 weeks ago. A Tuesday evening, Mason Whitaker, guest access, main lobby. He told the guard he was measuring for new art installations as a surprise for me. He was on the 3rd floor for 90 minutes. "They have been casing this building for almost a month," I said. The words felt like gravel in my mouth. The legacy dinner was not a party. It was the final move. It was their occupation force. My laptop chimed. A new email from Dahlia Trent. As usual. There was no greeting. It was pure information. Attached were 3 high-resolution, scanned PDFs. The first PDF. A copy of the canceled bank check from 8 years prior. It was made out to Evelyn Whitaker. The amount was for $15,000, plus an additional sum representing 4% interest, calculated to the day. The memo line was clear. Full repayment and release. Northline LLC capital contribution. The second PDF. The notarized corporate amendment. The document I had sat at their kitchen table to have her sign. Her signature, clean and looping. My signature. The notary's stamp, embossed and clear. The third PDF, the official receipt from the Secretary of State's office, showing the amendment had been filed and accepted. Dated 8 years ago. Dahlia's email contained a single sentence. The facts are collated. Send these to anyone who matters. Ignore anyone who does not. I forwarded the entire package to Noah and Riley. This, I said, pointing to my screen, is the only story. This is the only set of facts. Everything else is noise. The noise started at 11:30 a.m. The first attack was a blog post, a small, local business journal called the Harborview Business Beat, which mostly ran on press releases and local gossip. The headline was plastered on their front page, Family Feud at 235 Harbor Whitaker Matriarch Claims Stake in New Development. The article was light on facts and heavy on anonymous sources. A source close to the family. I could almost hear my Uncle Mark's voice claim the building was always meant to be a family legacy. It painted me as a hard-charging daughter who was locking out her own mother. It used the word dispute, which was a legal poison dart. A dispute suggests two sides with valid claims. At 2 p.m., the second attack landed. This one was public. My mother, Evelyn, posted on her Facebook page. She used a photo taken by a cousin from the night before. It was a perfectly framed shot of her, hand to her chest, looking crushed, with one of Dahlia's security guards visible in the background. Her post was a masterpiece of emotional warfare. I am heartbroken, she wrote. To have built something beautiful with my daughter, to have signed the very first papers that gave her company its start, only to be thrown out by cold lawyers and security guards the moment it became truly successful. I have always believed that success is a blessing to be shared. All I ever wanted was for my family, my children, to be secure. I suppose I learned a hard lesson in business today. I am praying for my daughter. It was brilliant. It was also a lie. She mentioned signing papers, validating her claim. She played the victim. She positioned me as a cold, godless mercenary. It had over 100 sad reacts in 20 minutes. Then came Mason. He posted a video reel to his Instagram. It was slick, edited. He used footage from the party before I arrived. Him with the laser measure, Haley's kids running down the hall, my mother raising a champagne glass. He had set it all to a fast-paced, inspirational audio track. All the incriminating audio, him claiming the third floor as his studio, my mother announcing the split, was gone. The caption, "So proud of the Whitaker family legacy. Amazing things coming soon at 235. Harbor, we are building something special. Family business legacy, Whitaker." He was publicly, digitally, claiming my building. The phone on my desk, the Northline Urban Works priority line, began to ring. The first call was from the sisters who wanted to open the bakery on the ground floor. "Hi, Nora," one of them said, her voice nervous. We are so excited, but we saw a blog post this morning. It said the building's ownership is in dispute. We are just a little worried about signing a 5-year lease if..." The second call was from an existing tenant on the 4th floor. "Nora, what is going on?" "Is the building being sold? My team is asking questions." The third call was not from a tenant. It was from Michael Stratton, the primary investor who had backed my acquisition of the land 2 years ago. He was not emotional. He was not angry. He was worse. He was calm. "Nora, I am seeing some noise on social media," he said, his voice flat. "I am getting calls from a man named Mark Whitaker. I need you to clarify the ownership structure for my board, immediately." My business was bleeding. This was not a family drama. This was slander of title. This was tortious interference. I ended the call and dialed Dahlia. "They've launched the media campaign," I said. "I see it," she replied. "The blog, Evelyn's post, Mason's video. It is a coordinated, 3-front attack: emotional, visual, and financial. My investor just called. My tenants are panicking. This is not gossip, Dahlia. This is affecting my revenue." "Good," she said. I stopped. "Good. Yes, now it is quantifiable damages. It moves from a family spat to a business tort. It gives us standing for an injunction. Now, here is the plan. We do not engage in the drama. The golden rule. Nora. Documents are louder than emotion. They are fighting with feelings. We will fight with facts. What does that mean? Practically, I said, pacing the concrete floor. It means we do not reply to Evelyn's Facebook post. We do not comment on Mason's video. That is what they want. It is drama bait. It makes the feud look real. We refuse to participate. So we do nothing. No, we execute a controlled, surgical, public counterattack. First, I am overnighting cease and desist letters to Evelyn, Mason, and your father. They will accuse them of defamation, slander of title, and tortious interference. They will demand a public retraction of all false claims of ownership within 24 hours. They will throw them away, I said. Of course they will. The letters are not for them. They are for the court. They establish a timeline of your good faith attempt to resolve this, and their malicious intent when they refuse, she continued. Second, I am sending a separate letter to the Harborview blog. It will put them on notice for publishing materially false statements regarding a property's title. I will attach the county deed. They will print a retraction by tomorrow, or they will be named as a co-defendant. And my investors, my tenants. That is your job, Dahlia said. You will draft one email. It will be clear, concise, and cold. You will attach the filed LLC articles. You will attach the deed. You will attach the notarized amendment showing Evelyn's removal. You will not use the word mother. You will not use the word family. You will refer to them only as third parties making false, superseded claims. You will send this package to every tenant, every investor, and every vendor. You provide the truth to the stakeholders. You avoid the drama bait. You let them scream into the void. I sat down at my desk. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from a cold, precise rage. I wanted to post the canceled $15,000 check on my mother's Facebook wall. I wanted to comment on Mason's video with a single word trespasser, but I heard Dahlia's voice. Documents are louder than emotion. I opened a new, blank email. To our valued partners and tenants of 235 Harbor Avenue, I typed, we are issuing this statement to correct false information. I would not fight their fire with fire. I would fight it with cold, hard, time-stamped paper. My office was no longer a place of business. It had become a war room. The whiteboards where I usually tracked tenant build-outs and lease timelines were now covered in complex diagrams of legal theory and personal connections. We were not just defending a building. We were dismantling a conspiracy that wore the mask of family. I gave our internal counteroffensive a name, a guiding principle that would inform every action we took. I wrote it on the top of the main board, Project Let the Documents Speak. Dahlia, Riley, and I spent the entire of Monday under the harsh glow of the conference room lights. The first and most critical task was building the spine of our case, the master timeline. This was not a summary. It was a granular, day-by-day, dollar-by-dollar history of Northline Urban Works, LLC. Start from day one, Dahlia instructed, her voice crisp. She was not billing by the hour for this. She was operating on retainer, which meant she was a general in my army. Assume the judge who will read this knows nothing. Assume the opposing counsel will try to twist everything. Riley was at the main keyboard, her fingers flying across the keys, pulling files from our encrypted servers. I sat opposite, cross-referencing my own paper files, the bank statements, the old loan agreements. Year 1, Riley called out. March 5th, LLC filed. Nora Chavez. Member, Evelyn Whitaker. Registered agent. Flag that, I said. Start the red file. The file of ambiguity and deliberate misrepresentation. Already on it, Dahlia said, starting a new legal pad. The registered agent ploy. Year 1, September 10th, Riley continued. Secured the $15,000 line of credit. Signatories. Nora Chavez, Evelyn Whitaker. Flag that for the yellow file, I said. The file of distortable facts. They will claim this is the seed of the entire empire, the family contribution. Which we defang, Dahlia added. with the next entry, Year 1, March 1st of the following year, Riley said, her voice tight with satisfaction. Payoff of the $15,000 line of credit, in full. Plus, she pulled the scan, 4% interest, and here it is. She projected the next document onto the main screen. It was the one I had taken to my parents' kitchen table. The notarized corporate amendment. March 2nd, I read, my voice flat. Evelyn Whitaker voluntarily and with full understanding releases all association with Northline Urban Works, LLC. Her name is removed from all articles. She signs here. We all looked at the screen. Her signature, looping and confident. Beside it, the embossed, circular stamp of the public notary. Scan the notary's seal at 600 dpi, Dahlia commanded. I want to be able to see the fibers of the paper it was pressed into. This is our anchor. Everything else is just noise. This is the fact that sinks their entire case. This is our blue file, the file of ironclad ownership. We spent the next 8 hours building that timeline. Every new acquisition, every refinancing, every capital call, every major lease, we laid it out, year by year, showing a clear and unbroken line of sole ownership. With every new project, the $15,000 loan from 8 years ago became smaller and smaller, shrinking from a founding contribution to what it actually was, a short-term loan, fully repaid with interest, that had been legally and formally extinguished. The money that bought 235 Harbor Avenue, $2.3 million of it, was secured by me, collateralized by other assets owned solely by my LLC, and had no financial connection to Evelyn Whitaker whatsoever. Next, we moved to the yellow file, the file of emotion. This was the one that worried me the most. Facts are clean, but feelings are messy, and my mother was an expert in weaponizing them. They will use your own words against you, Dahlia warned. Find me every email, every text, every birthday card where you thanked her. My stomach churned. This felt like a violation. Riley, seeing my hesitation, took over. She searched my archived email using keywords Mom, thanks, support. Couldn't have done it. The results were painful. She pulled one up from 7 years ago, after I landed my first major tenant. Subject: we did it. I had written, Mom, just wanted to say thank you again for everything. I know I was a nervous wreck, but your support meant the world. I could not have done this without you. I winced. In the wrong hands. That was a smoking gun. It is not, Dahlia said immediately, as if reading my mind. It is a daughter thanking her mother for emotional support. It is not a business contract. We will not hide from this. Nora, we will own it. We recontextualize it. The support was a phone call. The this was a single lease negotiation. We frame this as what it is: a normal, loving email that my client's mother is now attempting to twist into a financial stake she explicitly signed away. We show the judge the email, and then we show him the notarized release she signed a year earlier. We ask, which of these is a legal document? We spent 2 hours compiling the yellow file, finding every emotional landmine and preparing a factual counter-argument to defuse it. Now, the witnesses, Dahlia said, moving on. Who else can attest that you, and only you, have been the sole decision-maker for this company? We made a list: my primary banker, 2 long-term tenants, the investor, Michael Stratton, who had already called. I dialed Michael first. Michael, Nora, I am putting together a transparency package. I need a formal statement. You will have it, he said, his voice all business again. I am sending an affidavit from our legal team. It will state that 100% of our dealings, negotiations, and capital distributions regarding Northline Urban Works have been exclusively with you, Nora Chavez, as sole member. Will that suffice? That is perfect. Michael, thank you. He paused. Nora, do not let them drag you into the mud. You built this. You remind them. I hung up, feeling a small, cold spark of resolve. I made 2 more calls. 2 sworn affidavits were promised by the end of the day. The darkest part of the day was analyzing the surveillance footage from Sunday night. Riley had archived the full feed from every camera in the lobby, the hallways, and the elevators. We watched it, not as a family drama, but as prosecutors building a case. "There," I said, pointing to the screen. "Freeze it. 7:15 p.m. The image on the screen was Mason. He had his laser measure against the third-floor wall. But he was not alone. He was with Ron Peterson, the accountant. Ron was writing on his legal pad. "That is not a party," Dahlia said, her voice sharp. "That is a conspiracy to divide assets. We log that. Time, date, participants. Zoom in on the pad. Can we read it?" Riley enhanced the video. It was blurry, but the intent was clear. Columns, numbers. "Good enough," Dahlia said. "It shows intent." We kept watching. We saw my mother raise her glass. We logged the time. We saw my Uncle Mark taking photos of the electrical panels. We saw Haley and her husband pointing at different office suites on the second floor, as if choosing bedrooms. We analyzed the facial expressions, the confidence, the entitlement. This was not a group of people hoping for a handout. This was a group of people who had already decided they were the new owners. "This footage," Dahlia said, "is our proof of malicious intent. They were not celebrating. They were actively attempting to divide and allocate property they did not own. We will use this to get the injunction." While Riley logged the video evidence, I turned to the external threats, the blog. "Dahlia, the Harborview post is still up. It is still the first thing that comes up when you Google the building. We will fix that." She dictated the letter, and I typed. It was not a polite request. It was a formal demand. It cited the specific state statute for slander of title. It mentioned material misstatement causing demonstrable business harm, and noted that our attorney was prepared to name Harborview Business Beat as a co-defendant in a suit for damages if a full and public retraction was not posted within 12 hours. "Attach the county deed as Exhibit A," she finished. "Send it to their listed editor and their legal department." I hit send. The next call was to a specialist. "Dahlia, they built their entire public claim on that $15,000 loan. We need to kill that claim so dead it can never be mentioned again." "I have the man for that," she said. She made one call. Within an hour, a forensic accountant was looped into our system. His name was Arthur Vance, and his voice was dry as dust. His mandate was simple. "Mr. Vance," I said, "I need you to trace the capital flow for every major acquisition Northline Urban Works has ever made, starting with the payoff of the initial seed loan. I need you to produce a report, with charts, that proves in a court of law that not one single cent from Evelyn Whitaker or any other member of my family was used to acquire any of our current assets, especially 235 Harbor Avenue." "I understand," he replied. "I will trace the origin of all funds. The paper trail will tell the story." While the legal and financial attacks were being prepared, Riley and Noah were shoring up our defenses. Noah was already implementing a new standard operating procedure for all building staff and security. He sent me the draft. It was beautiful in its simplicity. New SOP, effective immediately. All individuals claiming authority, access, or right of entry to any non-public area of 235 Harbor Avenue based on company association or familial relation to Ms. Chavez's will be denied entry. All such claims must be verified, in real time, by cross-referencing the official public portal of the Secretary of State. The only valid credentials are those issued directly by Ms. Chavez or Ms. Cortez. No expired documents, no personal letters, and no verbal claims will be accepted. No exceptions. He had built the wall. Riley, in turn, finished the transparency package for our stakeholders. It was a single, clean, 5-page PDF. Page 1. A brief, cold statement identifying Northline Urban Works, LLC, as the sole owner. Page 2. The recorded grant deed. Page 3. The current articles of organization. Page 4. The 8-year-old notarized amendment. showing Evelyn's signature and the notary's seal. Page 5. A concluding statement that the company was secure and operations were normal. There was no mention of family, no emotion, no drama. It was just an antiseptic package of facts. "Sending it now," she said, "to all investors, all tenants, and all primary vendors." By midnight, the conference table was covered in neat stacks of paper, color-coded. The blue file, thick with deeds and filed amendments. The red file, containing the fraudulent, voided documents my mother had used, and the yellow file, filled with old emails and the new context that rendered them harmless. The cease and desist letters were printed, ready for a courier. The letter to the blog was sent. The accountant was digging. I looked at the whiteboard, at the project name I had written that morning. "Let the documents speak," I said, my voice hoarse. "They are," Dahlia replied, closing her briefcase. "And tomorrow, they are going to start shouting. We were playing chess. They were flipping the board. Our offensive, the cease and desist letters, the blog retraction, the forensic accountant was designed to establish a wall of facts. We expected them to retreat, to regroup, maybe even to grasp the legal jeopardy they were in. That was naive. We had assumed they were rational. The counterattack did not come as a phone call or another Facebook post. It arrived at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, via a professional, bonded court courier. It was not a letter, it was a summons. Riley signed for the thick, heavy packet. Her face was bleached of all color when she brought it into the conference room, holding it like it was radioactive. "Dahlia," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I think you need to see this." Dahlia took the packet. Her normally impassive expression tightened as she read the cover sheet. She said a name, and the name came out like an exhalation of smoke. "Victor Hanlon." "Who is Victor Hanlon?" I asked. "He is not a real estate lawyer," Dahlia said, her eyes already scanning the second page. "He is not a standard corporate litigator. Victor Hanlon is a specialist. He is a shark who swims exclusively in the bloody, chummed waters of high-net-worth family business disputes. He is the man you hire." She looked up at me, her gaze flat and hard. "When you want to burn your child's company to the ground to get a payout, your family just declared nuclear war." She spread the pages on the table. It was a formal complaint. Evelyn Whitaker, Mason Whitaker, and Haley Whitaker. Plaintiffs, v. Northline Urban Works LLC, and Nora Chavez. Defendants. "They are suing me personally," I stated. It was not a question. "Of course," Dahlia spat. "It is a standard Hanlon tactic. Maximize leverage, inflict emotional and financial distress, make it personal. Look at the claim." I read the heading. My breath caught. "Complaint for breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, and recognition of implied partnership." Implied partnership. I read the words aloud. They tasted like ash. That is insane. "We have a notarized, 8-year-old document proving she has no part. They are arguing the document is irrelevant," Dahlia said, her finger jabbing the text. "Hanlon is claiming that the conduct of the parties, superseding any written document, created an implied partnership. He is painting a picture where the family operated as a single, cohesive unit, and that you, Nora, were merely the managing partner for the Whitaker family enterprise. He is claiming you breached your fiduciary duty to your partners when you excluded them. It was a fiction, a complete, baseless, insulting fabrication, but it was written on official court paper, stamped and filed. And here," Dahlia said, her voice dripping with contempt, "is his evidence. It was our red and yellow files, weaponized beyond my darkest imagination. Exhibit A, the original, voided LLC articles, with my mother's name as registered agent, highlighted in fluorescent yellow. Exhibit B, the original, voided EIN application. Exhibit C, a scanned copy of a deposit slip. My mother had not kept my canceled repayment check. She had kept the deposit slip she used when she put that check in her account. On the memo line, in her own looping handwriting, she had scribbled, Family contribution, North Line, a note she had written to herself, now presented as a legal admission. Exhibit D, a collection of glossy, 8 by 10 photographs. My heart stopped. It was from the party. It was Mason with his laser measure. It was my mother toasting. It was Haley's husband pointing at office suites. But the photos were labeled. Exhibit D, Whitaker Family Board of Directors Meeting, Annual Planning Session, October 2025. They had turned their criminal trespass into a corporate meeting. "This is a joke," I said, my voice shaking with a cold rage. "This is perjury. We show the judge the notarized release. We show him the security footage of them breaking in." "We will," Dahlia said, "but this is not the real weapon. This," she held up a final, separate document. "This is the knife." It was an ex parte motion for a temporary restraining order and asset freeze. "They are making a motion," Dahlia translated, her voice dangerously low. "Without us in the room, they are claiming that you, Nora, are a rogue partner who is dissipating and hiding joint assets from the other implied partners. They are asking the court," she took a breath, "to freeze all operating accounts associated with 235 Harbor Avenue, effective immediately, to preserve the contested property pending a full hearing. They cannot possibly get that," I said, but the cold dread pooling in my stomach told me I was wrong. "In a normal dispute, no," Dahlia said. "But Hanlon is smart. He is vicious. He attached your transparency package, the email you sent to your investors. He is telling the judge, 'Look, she is already trying to convince stakeholders the property is all hers. She is actively moving to cut the family out. You must stop her now before the assets vanish. He is using our own defense as proof of our guilt.'" The phone on my desk rang. It was not a client. The caller ID read, "Superior Court of Washington, Clerk's Office." My blood turned to ice. Dahlia nodded slowly. I put the call on speaker. "This is Nora Chavez." "Ms. Chavez, this is the clerk for Judge Alistair Reed. I am calling to inform you that an ex parte motion for temporary financial relief has been granted. In part, in the case of Whitaker Vures, Northline Urban Works, a temporary limited freeze has been placed on account number ending in 4729, pending a preliminary injunction hearing in 10 days. You will be served with the full order shortly." The line clicked dead. The room was silent. Account 4729. That was not just an account. It was the account. It was the primary operations account for 235 Harbor Avenue. It held tenant security deposits. It held the capital for our new build-outs. It was the account from which I was scheduled to make a massive, 7-figure balloon payment for our refinancing, a payment that was due in 5 days. Hanlon had not just flipped the board, he had planted a bomb. He knew about the refinancing. He had to. He had timed this perfectly. If I missed that payment, I would be in default. The bank could seize the building. He was not trying to win the building. He was trying to make me lose it. If I lost it, the bank would sell it, and my family could try to claim the scraps from the auction. The world went into slow motion. "Riley," I said, my voice sounding distant, thin. "Call the bank. Call our representative, Alan. Tell them what just happened. Send him the full packet, the deed, the release, everything. Tell him a motion to dissolve is being filed." "On it," she said, her hands already flying, her face a pale mask. My computer chimed, an email from the Bakery sisters, the ones who wanted the last ground floor space. "Nora, we are so sorry. We just saw the news. A lawsuit. And our first deposit check was just returned. We cannot sign a lease on a building with a frozen account. We are heartbroken, but we have to withdraw our application." My first new tenants, gone. My cell phone rang. It was my primary HVAC vendor for the 4th floor build-out. "Nora, this is awkward. My bank just told me the check you sent for the deposit it was returned, from a frozen account. What the hell is going on? I have got a crew scheduled." My reputation, my credit, the 2 things I had spent a decade building, The two things that were more valuable than the building itself. They were being dismantled in hours. Then, Riley, who had been monitoring our social feeds, looked up from her screen, her face sick. "Nora, turn on Channel 5. Now." I clicked the small television in the corner of the conference room, the one usually tuned to financial news. There she was, my mother, Evelyn. She was standing on the public sidewalk outside 235 Harbor Avenue, the building looming behind her like a co-star. She was wearing a modest, dark-colored sweater. She looked small, frail, cold. She was being interviewed by a local news reporter. "Mrs. Whitaker," the reporter said, her face sympathetic. "Your daughter's attorney claims you have no legal stake in this building." My mother's voice, when it came, was a masterpiece. It trembled. She clutched a crumpled tissue in her hand. I do not understand all these legal papers. I am not a lawyer. I am just a mother." She looked directly into the camera, her eyes wet and shining with unshed tears. "I just want what is fair. I signed the first loan. We built this, all of us, as a family. We had a dinner, a board meeting, to talk about the future, and the next day, she threw me out, with guards." She dabbed her eye, a perfect, practice gesture. "This is not about money. It is about blood. She is my daughter. But she chose money. She chose a building over her own family. I am just praying for her." The reporter turned to the camera. "A heartbreaking story of a family torn apart by success. The Whitaker family is claiming implied partnership. Ms. Chavez's legal team calls the claim fraudulent. A court will now decide." The screen cut to a commercial for pickup trucks. I was shaking. I was vibrating with a rage so profound, so pure, it felt like it would split my skin. I wanted to storm down to that sidewalk, drag her off the curb, and hold the notarized release up to the camera. I wanted to scream. "She is lying," I whispered. "She is lying to the entire city." A hand touched my arm. It was Riley. Her grip was firm. "Nora, stop. Look at me. Do not react. This is what they want. This is the entire play. They want you to come down screaming. They want you to look unhinged. They want to be the calm, heartbroken victims. And they want you to be the ungrateful, crazy daughter. Do not give them the satisfaction. Sit down." I looked at her, at the fierce loyalty in her eyes. She was right. I sat. My hands were balled into fists so tight my nails were cutting crescents into my palms. The door to the conference room opened. Dahlia returned. She was not alone. She was followed by two men and a woman I had never seen, all carrying briefcases, all radiating the same lethal, expensive energy she did. "This is our new team," Dahlia said. No preamble. "This is Mark Kincaid and Sarah Jenkins. They are the two best commercial litigators in the state. And this," she pointed to the last man, who looked more like a librarian than a lawyer, "is Alan Phipps. His only job is to break injunctions. He is an artist." The new lawyers did not shake my hand. They sat and opened their notepads. "Mr. Phipps," Dahlia began. "Alan, Hanlon got an ex parte TRO based on a false claim of asset dissipation. We have a 5-day window before a catastrophic default on refinancing." Alan Phipps, the small man with piercing blue eyes, just nodded. "The bar is low for an ex parte. They just had to prove possible harm. The bar for the preliminary injunction hearing in 10 days is much higher. They will have to prove a likelihood of success on the merits. They do not have it." "We do not have 10 days, I said, my voice tight and raw. "We have 5, before I default." "Then we do not wait for the hearing," Phipps said simply. "We file an emergency motion today to dissolve the TRO. We argue it was obtained under fraudulent pretenses and, more importantly, in bad faith." "Bad faith?" I asked. "Yes," Dahlia said, a grim smile touching her lips. "Hanlon is good, but he is arrogant. He did not just file a lawsuit. He coordinated a public media campaign. He coordinated with your mother's television appearance to create a public narrative to increase pressure. He is not just litigating, he is trying to force a settlement by creating catastrophic business harm. He is trying to extort you. Judges, she said, do not like being used as tools for extortion. I looked at the faces around the table. The white-hot anger in my chest was beginning to cool, to sharpen into something hard and useful. My family, my mother, they thought I would fold. They thought I would be embarrassed by the public drama. They thought I would pay them to go away, just to make this stop. They thought I would sign a silent settlement. I stood up and looked at my new, expensive team. There will be no settlement, I said. There will be no negotiations. This is not a dispute. This is a containment operation. I want you to overturn this order. I want you to get this lawsuit dismissed with prejudice. And I want you to get sanctions against Victor Hanlon for filing a frivolous, bad faith claim. We will not be settling. We will be winning. Dahlia Trent allowed herself a small, solid smile. Good. Now, let's get to work. We have less than 24 hours to draft the motion. We need to attach every document, every timestamp, and every piece of evidence of their pressure campaign. We will prove this is not an implied partnership. We will prove this is a shakedown. The goal was set. We were not just defending, we were counterattacking, and we would use their own evidence, the party, the lies, the media, as the very proof of their malice. The 5 days granted by the bank's emergency forbearance were not a reprieve. They were a countdown. We were not just fighting a lawsuit anymore. We were fighting the clock. And we were fighting a narrative that had been designed to bankrupt me before I ever saw a courtroom. Our war room at 235 Harbor Avenue was now operating 24/7. The new legal team Dahlia, the litigators Kincaid and Jenkins, and the injunction specialist Phipps was a single, terrifyingly efficient machine. Dahlia was the first to land a blow that truly shifted the ground beneath us. She had been digging through the deep archives of the Secretary of State, not just the digital files. She was looking for the physical, time-stamped originals. "They are stupid, Nora," she said. Walking into the conference room late on Tuesday night, she dropped a file on the table that thudded with the weight of certified paper. "Hanlon is sloppy because he assumes we are emotional. He is relying on the First Amendment, the one from 8 years ago." She pulled out a document, heavily stamped. "He missed the second one." I looked at it. It was a routine corporate update, an amended and restated Articles of Organization. I had filed it 2 years after my mother signed her release, but 2 years before I even identified the Harbor Avenue property. It was a standard cleanup, one my bankers had suggested before I moved into the next tier of financing. "This document," Dahlia said, her finger tapping the page, "restates the entire corporate structure. It lists one member, Nora Chavez. It lists one class of shares, 100%, owned by Nora Chavez. It supersedes all previous articles. It makes the original document they filed with their lawsuit legally irrelevant, twice over." "But my mother's name is not on it anywhere," I said. "Exactly," Dahlia said. "She was not a party to it. She did not need to be. She had already been gone for 2 years. The chain of title is clean. The chain of incorporation is also clean. We now have 2 separate, notarized, state-filed documents that prove she has no claim." The second blow came from the forensic accountant, Arthur Vance. He joined our conference call at dawn on Wednesday. His voice was as dry as sandpaper. "Ms. Chavez, Mr. Phipps, I have completed the trace. The report is uploading to your portal now." "Give us the summary, Arthur," Phipps said, pacing with his phone. "The summary is simple," Vance replied. "The plaintiff's claim of an implied partnership based on the $15,000 seed loan is factually baseless. I traced that loan from its inception." He walked us through it. We saw the $15,000 enter the LLC. 6 months later, we saw the repayment, plus interest, leave the LLC. We saw that check deposited into Evelyn Whitaker's personal checking account, and then he showed us something brilliant. "From that account," Vance continued, Mrs. Whitaker paid her property taxes, bought a new set of patio furniture, and took a cruise. Not one single cent of that repaid capital, or any other capital originating from her, ever re-entered the Northline Urban Works LLC. The financial relationship was terminated, in full, 8 years ago. And the Harbor Avenue purchase, I asked. Sterile, he said. The $2.3 million acquisition was funded by a combination of your investment partner, Mr. Stratton, and a commercial loan collateralized by 3 other properties you had already owned for several years. Properties acquired long after Ms. Whitaker's separation from the company. Her financial nexus to your current assets is not just small, it is zero. The paper trail is absolute. She did not build this. She did not fund this. She was, in legal and financial terms, a stranger to the transaction. The conference room was silent. Phipps, the injunction breaker, let out a slow breath. That, he said, is the ball game. But it was Riley who found the dagger. She had been quiet, consumed by her own task. She was reviewing security logs, social media posts, and every piece of digital communication she had. Late Wednesday, she looked up from her laptop, her face pale. Nora, she said, her voice strained. I found it. I found the proof of bad faith. She explained, during the legacy dinner, when she had been standing awkwardly by the catering table, trapped. My Uncle Mark and my brother Mason had been huddled near the elevator, believing she was out of earshot. She had been terrified, and she had started a voice memo on her phone, just in case. She had forgotten about it. Now, she pressed play. The audio was muffled, full of clinking glasses and the party's music, but the voices were clear, arrogant, and close to the phone's microphone. It was my uncle. Just not sure she will go for it. Mason, she's stubborn. Then Mason's voice. She will. She will freak out when she sees the lawsuit. She has that big refinancing coming up. She cannot afford the hit. Then, the voice that stopped my heart. My mother, Evelyn. Her voice was not the trembling, heartbroken performance she gave for the cameras. It was cold, sharp, and calculating. She will fight, my mother said, but she is terrified of bad press. She worships her reputation. We push, hard. We file the suit. We freeze the account. We push the heartbroken family angle. She will be afraid of losing her investors. She will accept a settlement. She will pay us to make it go away. It is the only way this works. We just have to push. Riley stopped the recording. No one spoke. The legal team just stared at the speaker. Kincaid, the litigator, was the first to move. He slowly put his pen down and steepled his fingers. That, he said softly, is a confession. That is not a person seeking justice. That is a person documenting a conspiracy to extort. This is unclean hands. This is willful, malicious, and filed in bad faith. A judge will be apoplectic. Dahlia nodded, a cold, hard light in her eyes. This audio file is now Exhibit A of our emergency motion. We synthesize everything into one narrative. The financial report proves the claim is false. This recording proves why they filed the false claim. They are not victims. They are predators. We spent the next 12 hours in a focused fury. The risk of the asset freeze choking us was still very real. Phipps and Dahlia initiated an emergency, legal-to-legal channel with the bank's general counsel. We are sending you a transparency package, Phipps said on the call, his voice all steel. It includes a full forensic accounting report and a notarized release. It proves our client is the sole owner and your loan is secure. We are simultaneously filing an emergency motion to dissolve the TRO based on fraud and bad faith. We expect a ruling within 48 hours. We are asking the bank to recognize this as a bad faith action by a third party and to grant a formal 72-hour forbearance on the default clock while the court corrects the error. We sent the package. The bank's lawyers, seeing the forensic report and the notarized release, saw their own asset put at risk by a frivolous claim. They agreed. The default clock was paused. Inside the building, I moved to secure the human element. I held a brief, mandatory meeting with my entire staff, which was just Riley, Noah, and 2 administrators. I did not share the recording. I did not need to. There is a legal action against this company, I said, my voice steady. It is baseless, and we are handling it. You have seen the news. You have probably seen my mother on television. None of it is true, but our operational accounts are temporarily restricted. This is a tactic designed to make us panic. We will not. I looked at Riley. Riley has already moved all payroll and vendor payments to our secondary holding account. No one will miss a paycheck. The lights will stay on. I looked at Noah. Noah, your new security protocols are in effect, as of this morning. He nodded, sliding a paper across the table. He signed the new, enhanced standard operating procedure in front of everyone. It was a zero-trust policy. No one, not family, not friends, not even a person claiming to be me without the proper digital credentials, would be allowed access. All paperwork would be refused and sent to Dahlia. No one will ever bypass our security with old documents again, Noah said. It was a vow. We were not a family. We were a corporation under siege, and we were behaving like one. That night, my legal team and I rehearsed. We were filing the emergency motion at 9 a.m. the next morning. We had to be ready for an immediate hearing. Jenkins, the other litigator, played Hanlon. Ms. Chavez, how can you claim your mother is a stranger? Is this not her signature? On the founding documents, is this not your family? Celebrating your joint success. I looked at her, my hands clasped on the table, just as Dahlia had taught me. That is a voided document from 8 years ago, superseded by 2 subsequent state filings, and that was not a celebration. That was a coordinated, unauthorized trespass. And we have the security footage to prove it. You are cold, she countered. You chose money over your own blood. I chose the law over an illegal shakedown, I replied. This is not about blood. This is about boundaries. This is about corporate governance. I am asking the court to uphold the legal documents I filed and the ones my mother signed. I am asking the court to let the documents speak for me. She is ready, Phipps said. Dahlia closed her briefcase. We are ready. We are not just asking to dissolve the freeze. We are asking for dismissal with prejudice. That was the legal equivalent of a kill shot. It meant they could never bring this claim again. We will argue that the combination of the forensic report and the audio recording proves their entire case is a fabrication, filed in bad faith, with the specific intent of causing catastrophic financial harm to extort a settlement. Dahlia said, They used the court. We are going to ask the court to punish them for it. Kincaid pulled up the presentation we had built. It was a digital timeline, stark and irrefutable. Slide 1. The timeline, the $15,000 loan and its repayment, tiny on the far left, a long 8-year line of me working alone. Then, on the far right, the massive $2.3 million acquisition of Harbor Avenue. Slide 2. The release, my mother's signature, blown up, next to the notary's seal. Slide 3. The lie, the photo they submitted of their board meeting. Slide 4. The truth. A short, 5-second clip from my security camera, showing Mason and the accountant measuring the walls. Time-stamped, Slide 5, the intent. A scrolling transcript of the audio file Riley had captured. She will be afraid of losing her reputation. She will accept a settlement. It was devastating. It was a story told entirely through boundaries and minutes, through documents and data. Now, Dahlia said, we just need a place to deliver the final blow. Riley, who was monitoring social media, looked up. They just gave it to us. Mason is promoting a prayer vigil for the family this Saturday on the sidewalk, right in front of this building. Dahlia allowed herself the smallest, most terrifying smile I had ever seen. Good, she said. They have provided the perfect backdrop. They love to make this a symbolic fight. Let us make our victory symbolic, too. We will turn their stage into our evidence. The hearing for our emergency motion to dissolve the asset freeze was set for 9 a.m. on Friday. We had less than 48 hours to survive, but the new intelligence from Riley, the screenshot from the private chat, had changed the entire game. The prayer vigil on the sidewalk was just a smokescreen. The real plan, as Mason had written, was to march in as a family and claim our boardroom. They were planning a second, more aggressive occupation. This time under the guise of a peaceful protest. I looked at Alan Phipps, the injunction specialist. They are planning to violate the asset freeze and trespass, all while the media watches. They are creating a public spectacle. Then we must give them a spectacular stage, Phipps said, a rare, cold smile touching his lips. He picked up the phone. I am amending our emergency motion. We are no longer just asking to dissolve the freeze. We are asking the judge for a new, proactive restraining order, one that specifically addresses this planned event. We spent the next 36 hours in a blur of focused, legal warfare. Our team was a machine, while Phipps and Kincaid finalized the motion attaching the forensic accounting, the superseding LLC documents, and the damning audio file. Riley and I were preparing the battlefield. If they are coming on Saturday, I said, we will not be barricaded in. We will not look like victims. We will host an event. I called the city. I filed an emergency permit for a private corporate function in the lobby of 235 Harbor Avenue, scheduled for the exact time of their vigil. The official title, the Northline Urban Works Tenant Safety and Ownership Assurance Briefing. Dahlia, I said, our presence is now legal, official, and documented with the city. Anyone not invited is not a guest. They are a trespasser. Good, she said. Now, the stage. I hired an audio-visual company, the best in the city, for a last-minute tenant presentation, at noon on Friday, while Dahlia, Phipps, and Kincaid were in court. The AV team arrived. They installed a seamless 30-foot LED wall at the back of the lobby, facing the front glass doors. It was bright enough to be seen from space. It was certainly bright enough to be seen from the sidewalk. The lead technician looked at me skeptically. This is a lot of tech for a tenant intro, ma'am. I want our tenants to feel very secure, I replied. Then came the caterers. I called the same company my mother had hired for her disastrous legacy dinner. This is Nora Chavez, I said. I understand my mother, Evelyn, had to cancel her event last week. I would like to assume that contract, in full, for this Saturday, same menu, same bar setup. The catering manager was baffled but relieved. So, the event is back on. The event is on, I confirmed. But the host and the guest list have changed. Riley looked at me. You are paying for their party. I am paying to eliminate a liability, I said. The last thing I need is a lawsuit from a small business claiming we cost them a contract. We pay the bill, we control the environment, we leave them no angle to countersue. My phone buzzed. It was Dahlia. I picked it up, my heart hammering. Well, the judge, Dahlia said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice, was appalled. I sagged against the wall. The freeze. Dissolved. Effective immediately, she said. The bank has been notified. The default is averted. Hanlon was sanctioned for bad faith filing. The judge called his Exhibit D, the board meeting photos, an audacious fabrication, and she granted our second motion, the new TRO. She granted it, Dahlia confirmed. A new temporary restraining order is in effect. Evelyn, Mason, and Haley are hereby enjoined from trespassing, and specifically from making any false claims of ownership or partnership, verbally or in writing. While within 500 feet of 235 Harbor Avenue, she set the radius herself. If they step on the sidewalk and say, "This is their building," they are in contempt of court. We had the shield, we had the sword, we had the venue. Saturday, 3 p.m., the pieces were in place. Noah had briefed his security team, 4 guards, all ex-military, all wearing immaculate black suits. "Body cams on," he ordered, his voice sharp. "Time is synced. We do not engage. We do not speak. We are a visual deterrent. Our presence is to record. The lawyers do the talking. He had a small stack of white plastic keycards. These are the credentials for our event, he said. Every real tenant, every investor I invited to this briefing has one. If a person is not on my list, they do not get a card. If their name is Whitaker, they are not on the list. At 3:15 p.m., Dahlia's final piece arrived. A quiet woman in a simple gray business suit, carrying a small, hard-sided case. "Nora, this is Janet Brewer," Dahlia said. "Ms. Brewer is a certified court reporter. She is here as an independent, third-party witness, credentialed for our private event. She will be creating a formal, admissible transcript of everything that happens, from the moment our guests arrive." Janet nodded politely, found a quiet corner with a clear view of the lobby, and began setting up her discreet audio equipment and steno machine. At 3:30 p.m., the caterers began passing champagne and sparkling water. The lobby, once the scene of my family's hostile audit, was now a sterile, professional, and controlled environment. Riley stood near the main concierge desk, her iPad charged and ready. It was loaded with a dozen personalized files. Each one was a formal, finalized cease and desist and notice of trespass, customized with the name and photograph of every member of my family. From my mother down to my Uncle Mark, they were ready to be served. Dahlia, Kincaid, and Jenkins mingled near the bar, looking like attendees at a corporate mixer. I stood near the front, my back to the dark, 30-foot LED screen. I had dressed with precision. I wore a tailored black suit. My hair pulled back. I wore no jewelry, save for one small, silver pin on my lapel. It was not a flower or a logo. It was a perfect, custom-made, to-scale outline of the building's property plot. A silent, wearable deed. We waited. Through the vast glass walls, we saw them assemble on the public sidewalk. It was just as Riley had predicted. The prayer vigil, a crowd of about 30 people, relatives, friends, a few professional-looking protesters I did not recognize. They carried pre-printed signs. Family over fortunes. Nora, honor thy mother. Whitaker legacy. And just as planned, the local news van pulled up. The same reporter who had interviewed my mother, Evelyn, stepped forward. She was dressed in black, as if in mourning. She took the small megaphone they had brought. She was about to perform. "They are all in position," Riley murmured. "Good," I said. I looked at the AV technician in the corner. "Turn it on." The technician hit a switch. Behind me, the 30-foot LED wall blazed to life. It was not a welcome message. It was not a tenant slideshow. It was a single, massive, digitized image of the 8-year-old notarized release, with my mother's signature and the notary's bright red seal. Each one the size of a car. I nodded to Noah. He walked to the main glass doors, the ones my family was staring at, and he unlocked them. The building safety announcement was about to begin. The lobby was a stage, set for a performance of corporate ownership. The catering staff, the same ones from before, moved with professional grace, offering champagne on silver trays. The bar was open. The lighting was low and warm, golden, just as my mother had liked it for her legacy dinner. I had even hired a DJ, a detail that had made Dahlia raise an eyebrow until I explained. He was playing a soft, instrumental playlist, the kind of generic, expensive music that fills the silence at corporate mixers. The heavy glass doors stood open. Out on the sidewalk, the scene was one of confusion. My mother, Evelyn, megaphone in hand, stared at the massive 30-foot image of her own signature on the LED wall. The news crew she had brought filmed her reaction. The reporter looked from my mother to the open doors, a microphone extended. My father, his hand on his cane, gestured toward the entrance. "It is a trick," I heard him say, his voice a low growl. But Mason was already walking forward, his face a mask of arrogant triumph. "It is not a trick," he announced, loud enough for the camera. "It is a surrender. She is finally being smart. She knows she cannot win. He strode into the lobby as if he already owned it. He looked at the bar, at the caterers, at me. He smiled. "About time, Nora," he said. My mother followed. Her protesters and relatives streaming in behind her. They saw the open bar, the flowing champagne, the warm lights. They saw the DJ. They mistook my legal trap for the party they had always wanted. Their prayer vigil signs were dropped unceremoniously by the door. My Uncle Mark, the one from the audio recording, grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray and laughed. "See, I told you she would cave. All it took was a little push." My mother, Evelyn, stood in the center of the room. She was a performer regaining her stage. She looked at the giant image of her signature on the screen, and she actually smiled, recontextualizing it instantly. "It is beautiful," she said, her voice full of pride, loud enough for the reporter to hear. "The very document I signed to give her a start, the foundation of our legacy. She is finally honoring it." She took a champagne flute from Mason. She raised it high. The news camera light clicked on, illuminating her. "A toast," she declared, her voice ringing with victory. "To the Whitaker legacy, to family, to building something together, and to sharing it fairly." "To the Whitakers," my uncle echoed. The relatives cheered, raising their stolen glasses. They were drinking my evidence. Mason, high on the perceived victory, grabbed an architectural plan he must have brought for his protest from a tube. He unrolled it on a high-top table, right in front of the independent court reporter, Janet, who was typing silently. "Look," he said to the reporter, pointing to the plans. "I am turning the entire third floor into my new studio. The light is perfect. It is the creative hub of the new Whitaker family enterprise." My sister, Haley, joined in, pointing up at the mezzanine. "And the second floor is for me, a safe space for the children, away from the offices." They were doing it. They were reenacting their original crime, frame for frame. They were publicly on camera and in front of a court witness, violating the brand new restraining order that Dahlia had secured less than 24 hours earlier. They were making false claims of ownership inside the 500-foot radius. I caught Dahlia's eye. She gave me a single, sharp nod. I raised my hand. The DJ, who was an audio-visual tech I had hired, saw the signal. He did not fade the music. He hit a kill switch. The instrumental playlist cut off mid-note. The silence was absolute, shocking. Every head in the room snapped toward the DJ booth. In the same second, the AV tech hit another switch. The warm, golden party lights vanished, replaced by a harsh, cold, shadowless white light. The lobby was instantly transformed from a cocktail party into an operating theater. Every relative, every friend, stood frozen. The champagne flutes hung suspended in the air, and then the screen changed. The image of my mother's signature vanished. It was replaced by a new slide, a clean white background with black, sans serif text. It was a direct quote from the notarized release. "In consideration of payment received, Evelyn Whitaker hereby releases, disclaims, and surrenders all past, present, and future interest." My mother's face went white. She knew that text. What is this, Nora?" she stammered. "This is not what we agreed." "We agreed to nothing. Mother," I said, my voice, amplified by the same PA system the DJ was using, filled the entire lobby. It was cold, clear, and did not shake. The screen changed again. A high-resolution scan of the canceled check for $15,000, plus interest, paid to her, 8 years ago. "This," my voice announced, "is the full and final repayment of the seed loan." The screen changed again. A scan of the bank deposit slip she had used to file her lawsuit, the one where she had written family contribution. It was shown side by side with the forensic accountant's report, tracing that exact deposit to her patio furniture and her cruise. A red line showed the money leaving my company. A blue line showed it going to her personal expenses. A bright, clear label read, Financial nexus 0. My Uncle Mark stopped laughing. "What is the meaning of this?" my father boomed, stepping forward, his face purple. He raised his cane. "You will not disrespect your mother." "I am respecting the law," I said. The screen changed again, a timeline, a long green line representing my company, a tiny red dot on the far left, labeled E. Whitaker Loan, paid in full, year 1. A long, unbroken green line of sole ownership, and on the far right, a massive blue block labeled 235 Harbor Avenue, acquired year 9, funding N. Chavez, sole member. "This," I declared to the room, "is the timeline of ownership. It is not a legacy, it is a balance sheet." As the room stood in stunned, horrified silence, two figures in dark blue uniforms stepped through the open doors. They were not my private security. They were court marshals. Dahlia had scheduled them. One of them held a document. His voice was calm, official, and utterly indifferent to the drama. "By order of the Superior Court," he announced, his voice cutting through the silence. "A temporary restraining order is in effect. Evelyn Whitaker, Mason Whitaker, and Haley Whitaker are hereby enjoined from making false public claims of ownership regarding this property." He looked directly at Mason, who was still holding his blueprints. "Sir, your claim to the 3rd floor is a direct violation of this order." He looked at Evelyn. "Ma'am, your toast was a direct violation of this order." He looked at the news reporter. "And your crew has recorded it all." My mother, a cornered animal, reverted to her only script. Her face crumpled. The tears came, real this time, tears of pure, unadulterated rage. "She is a monster!" she shrieked, pointing at me, playing to the camera one last time. "She tricked me. She tricked all of us. How can you do this to your own mother? I signed those papers. Which ones?" "Evelyn." Dahlia's voice sliced through her performance. Dahlia stepped forward, pointing not at my mother, but at the 30-foot screen behind me. The screen had changed one last time. It was the audio file, the transcript of her voice, from Riley's recording. "She is terrified of bad press. We push hard. She will accept a settlement. She will pay us to make it go away." My mother stopped. She read the words. She looked at Mason. She looked at my uncle. She looked at the news camera. She had been performing betrayed mother. The screen was showing convicted extortionist. Dahlia walked up to her, her voice low, but clear enough for the court reporter to get every word. "You were saying, Mrs. Whitaker, you were talking about your signature. Would you like to point to the one you mean, the one on the fraudulent document you filed with the court, or the one on the notarized release you signed 8 years ago? Or perhaps," she gusted to the screen, "you would like to authenticate your voice on this recording, proving your entire lawsuit was filed in bad faith." My mother did not say a word. The party was over. The music had stopped. The bright, cold lights of the LED wall illuminated every stunned, guilty face. The lobby was no longer a party. It was a courtroom. It was a hearing. And the evidence was on display for everyone, including the media they had brought, to see. There was no more confusion. There was no more legacy. There was only the truth, 30 feet high. The courtroom was not the grand, wood-paneled chamber from television. It was a motions court, fluorescent lit, smelling of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. It was a functional, brutal room, designed for speed. We were not here for a jury trial. We were here for a kill. I sat between Dahlia and Alan Phipps. Our team, Kincaid and Jenkins, sat behind us. We were a wall of dark suits. We were prepared. Across the aisle. Their side looked thin. Victor Hanlon sat in the center, his expensive suit looking a size too large. My mother, Evelyn, sat beside him, dressed in a muted gray, trying to look like a woman dragged into a world she did not understand. Mason sat behind her, his arms crossed, radiating a sullen, adolescent anger. Haley, notably, was absent. "Case number 25C8849 Whitaker v. Northline Urban Works," the clerk called. "Judge Reed presiding." We all stood. The judge, the same one who had granted the ex parte freeze, entered. He looked tired and impatient. He looked at the file, then at the packed rows. "Mr. Hanlon," he said, "this is an emergency hearing on the defendant's motion to dissolve a TRO this court granted. The burden is on them. But the TRO was granted based on your representations. So, you can begin. Why should I not dissolve this freeze and sanction you for wasting my time?" Hanlon stood. He was smooth, his voice resonant, respectful. He was a performer, and this was his stage. "Your Honor, thank you. This is not about wasting time. This is about protecting a family from being systemically erased from its own legacy. My clients are not legal experts. They are a family, a mother, a son, a daughter." He gestured to my mother. "This," he said, "is the woman who, 8 years ago, signed the founding documents, who put her own name and credit on the line to give this entire enterprise its start." He was telling the story. The grand, sweeping story of the Whitaker family enterprise. "What my clients are asking for is simple recognition," Hanlon continued. "Recognition that for 8 years, they operated as an implied partnership, that Nora Chavez, the defendant, was the managing partner, that they, the equity partners, provided the emotional support, the strategic guidance, the very foundation this company was built on. They held regular board meetings which they, as a family, simply called dinner to discuss the business." He held up his Exhibit D, the glossy photos of the legacy dinner. "This was one such meeting, Your Honor, a planning session, and for this, for asking for their rightful share, Ms. Chavez did not just refuse. She did not just deny them. She hired armed guards. She locked them out. And as we showed in our motion, she immediately began clarifying ownership to her investors, actively dissipating the very assets my clients are entitled to, the assets this court mercifully protected." He sounded reasonable. He sounded like a man defending the defenseless. Dahlia stood up. She did not look at Hanlon. She addressed the judge. "Your Honor, Mr. Hanlon is telling a compelling story. I, however, will be presenting the facts." She placed the first file on the lectern. "Mr. Hanlon claims an implied partnership. This is legally impossible, as the partnership he refers to was explicitly and legally dissolved 8 years ago." She projected the document onto the courtroom screens, the notarized release, my mother's signature, the notary's seal. "This is the executed and notarized amendment, showing Ms. Evelyn Whitaker, in exchange for full repayment plus interest, releasing all claims on the LLC. This was filed with the Secretary of State." Hanlon flinched. He had clearly told my mother that document was meaningless. "Second," Dahlia continued, "he claims this implied partnership built the $2.3 million asset in question. This is also false." She projected the timeline, the long green line, the red dot, the blue block. As the timeline clearly shows, Ms. Whitaker was legally separated from the company 2 full years before the Harbor Avenue property was even identified, and 8 years before it was acquired. Her financial nexus to this building is 0. She motioned to our forensic accountant, Arthur Vance, who stood. "Mr. Vance's report, submitted with our motion, confirms this. Not 1 cent of the plaintiff's money touched this asset." Dahlia paused, letting the silence hang. "So, the question is not, do they have a case? The question is, why would they file a case they know is factually baseless? Why would they risk perjury? Why would they submit fraudulent documents like their Exhibit D?" She looked at Hanlon, then at my mother. "Because this was never a lawsuit, Your Honor. It was an extortion attempt." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Hanlon shot to his feet. "Objection counsel is testifying. She is ascribing motive." "I am not ascribing it, Your Honor," Dahlia said, her voice lethally calm. "I am submitting it." She signaled to the tech. "I submit into evidence defendant's Exhibit F, a sworn affidavit from Riley Cortez, and an audio recording, time-stamped, from a meeting Ms. Whitaker and her son held, where they planned this entire endeavor. She pressed play. The courtroom was filled with my mother's voice, cold, calculating, and clear. She is terrified of bad press. We push, hard. We file the suit. We freeze the account. She will accept a settlement. She will pay us to make it go away. A collective gasp came from the gallery. My mother sank in her chair, her face the color of ash. Victor Hanlon looked at his client as if seeing her for the first time. He had been lied to. His victim was a co-conspirator. Judge Reed's face, which had been impatient, was now dark with a controlled fury. He looked at Hanlon. "You brought this into my courtroom." "And, Your Honor," Dahlia continued, relentless. To compound this bad faith filing, they submitted Exhibit D, those photographs of their board meeting. She signaled to the tech again. "I would like to submit Defendant's Exhibit G. This is the security footage from that same night, the night they claimed to be a board. This is what they were actually doing." The screen lit up. It was the security footage from the first party. My brother, Mason, with his laser measure, my uncle Mark, laughing with the accountant, Ron Peterson, who was taking notes. My mother, raising her glass under the Whitaker Legacy dinner banner, the one they had hung in my lobby without permission. "That," Dahlia said, "is not a board meeting, Your Honor. That is footage of a criminal trespass. That is a conspiracy to illegally divide and allocate assets they did not own." Dahlia returned to the lectern. "Mr. Hanlon's entire case rests on an implied partnership. This partnership is disproven by the notarized release. It is disproven by the state filing. It is disproven by the forensic accounting. There was no ongoing consideration. There was no shared risk. There was no detrimental reliance. My client built this empire while his clients took cruises. And, as the audio proves, the plaintiffs knew they had no case. Their complaint was just the primary tool in an attempt to extort money, and they used this court's Turo as the weapon." The lawyer for the bank, who had been sitting quietly, stood up. "Your Honor, the bank confirms. Our relationship is solely with Northline Urban Works, LLC, as managed by Nora Chavez. This asset freeze is jeopardizing a performing multi-million-dollar loan based on what is clearly a fraudulent claim. We support the motion to dissolve immediately." The judge stared at the screen, at the frozen image of my brother measuring my wall. He looked at Hanlon, who was shuffling papers. His confidence evaporated. Then, the judge looked at my mother. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said. His voice was quiet, and that made it terrifying. "Mrs. Whitaker, please stand." My mother stood, her hands trembling. "I am looking at Exhibit B, the notarized amendment releasing all your interest in this company. Is that your signature?" My mother looked at Hanlon. She looked at me. I am not a legal expert," she whispered, falling back on her one failed script. I thought, "It is a simple question, ma'am. Yes or no. Is that your signature?" She looked at the floor. "Yes." "Thank you. You may sit." The judge turned to Dahlia. "Counselor, what are you asking for?" Dahlia stood. "We ask for 4 things, Your Honor. 1, the immediate dissolution of the temporary restraining order. 2, the dismissal of the plaintiff's entire complaint, with prejudice, on the grounds that it is frivolous and filed in bad faith. 3, a permanent restraining order, barring the plaintiffs from any contact with Ms. Chavez and from trespassing on any Northline property. And 4, full sanctions against Mr. Hanlon and his clients for this malicious use of the court." Hanlon was desperate. He stood up, his voice cracking. "Your Honor, this is an ambush, this audio, this footage. It is prejudicial. It is taken out of context. We have not had time for discovery. We have not had time to depose Ms. Chavez, to review the full corporate books. We request more time. The judge looked at him, his eyes flat. More time for what, Mr. Hanlon? Discovery on what? On a notarized document you failed to find, on a forensic report that proves your case is a fantasy, on your own client's voices, captured on audio. Planning this shakedown, you did not file a lawsuit, you filed a threat, and you had the audacity to ask this court to be your muscle. He looked at the timeline on the screen. He saw the 8-year gap between my mother's signature and my purchase of the building. He shook his head, a small, disgusted motion. I have seen enough, the judge said. He began to gather his papers, ready to rule. This court finds, Your Honor. The voice was mine. It was clear and steady. The entire courtroom, including Dahlia, looked at me, shocked. The judge paused, his hand in the air. Ms. Chavez, this is highly irregular. I know, Your Honor. My apologies. I stood, my hands clasped in front of me. I looked at Hanlon. I looked at Mason. I looked at my mother. I have sat here and listened to Mr. Hanlon tell a story about a family, about emotions, about legacies. I turned back to the judge. My lawyers have presented the truth. It is not a story. It is a set of facts. My only request, I said, my voice ringing in the silent room, is that you let the documents speak. Judge Reed looked at my mother. He looked at Mason. He looked at Victor Hanlon. His expression was one of profound professional disgust. He did not look at me. He looked at the stack of evidence Dahlia had submitted, the bound copies of the timeline, the release, the forensic report. Ms. Chavez, the judge said, his voice flat, you have asked to let the documents speak. They have spoken with absolute clarity. He turned his gaze back to Hanlon. This court finds as follows. The plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction is denied. The defendant's emergency motion to dissolve the temporary restraining order is granted, effective immediately. The clerk is ordered to transmit this ruling to the bank within the hour. The asset freeze is terminated. I let out a breath I had been holding for 5 days. The default was over. Furthermore, the judge continued, his voice hardening, the defendant's motion to dismiss the underlying complaint is also granted. This court finds that the plaintiff's claims of an implied partnership, unjust enrichment, and breach of fiduciary duty are not just unlikely to succeed on the merits, they are factually baseless, demonstrably false, and have been filed in bad faith. Hanlon started to rise, but the judge's voice pinned him to his seat. This court finds the plaintiff's submission of Exhibit D, the photographs of their board meeting, to be a fraudulent misrepresentation. It finds the audio recording of Exhibit F to be credible evidence of a conspiracy to commit extortion, using this court as a tool. Therefore, the complaint is dismissed with prejudice. The words hit like a gavel. With prejudice, it was over. They could never file this claim again, ever. Finally, Judge Reed said, this court grants the defendant's motion for a permanent restraining order. Evelyn Whitaker, Mason Whitaker, and Haley Whitaker are hereby enjoined, permanently, from contacting Nora Chavez, Riley Cortez, or any employee of Northline Urban Works. They are barred from entering or trespassing on any property owned or managed by the LLC, including the commercial premises at 235 Harbor Avenue, and they are further enjoined from publishing, posting, or otherwise disseminating any false statements claiming ownership, partnership, or legacy rights to the company or its assets, on any social media platform or to any news outlet. He looked at Hanlon. And as for sanctions, this court will take that under advisement. But Mr. Hanlon, I suggest you review your malpractice insurance. He struck the gavel. We are adjourned. It was over in less than 30 minutes. My mother was frozen, her face a mask of disbelief. Mason was shaking his head, whispering, no, no, no. Hanlon was furiously, uselessly, stuffing papers into his briefcase, his face crimson. Dahlia was already on her feet, handing a new document to the marshal. Your Honor, One final clarification, she said, cutting through Hanlon's retreat. The plaintiffs and their associates are currently gathered at the property in question, in violation of the new restraining order. We also have, from the party last night, executed trespass notices for every individual who invaded the lobby. We request the court's confirmation that the marshals can enforce this permanent injunction and those notices immediately. The judge looked at the marshal. The order is clear. The property is private. The injunction is in effect. Enforce it. The ride back to 235 Harbor Avenue was silent. Dahlia sat beside me. I sat in the back. The adrenaline of the fight was draining away, leaving a hollow, echoing exhaustion. I had won, but I had been forced to burn down my own family to do it. There was no triumph in that, only the grim, necessary finality of a surgeon who has just completed a radical amputation. When we pulled up, the scene was one of chaos. The prayer vigil crowd was still there, but their signs were drooping. They had clearly heard the news. The news van was still there. The reporter trying to get a statement from a shell-shocked Uncle Mark. I walked past them. I did not look at them. They were, in legal terms, irrelevant. I entered my lobby. It was a wreck. The caterers had cleared the food, but the remnants of the night before were everywhere. The DJ booth was dark. The 30-foot LED screen was powered down. A few deflated balloons were in a corner, and, hanging limply from the mezzanine, was the Whitaker Legacy banner, the one my brother had hung. It was a tangible piece of their lie, a physical artifact of their delusion. Noah Pike was standing by the main desk, his arms crossed. He had been waiting. He looked at me, and for the first time, his professional demeanor cracked. He gave me a single, exhausted nod of relief. "It is over, Noah," I said. "It is time to clean up." Dahlia was on her phone. "They are 2 minutes out," as if on cue. The 2 court-martials, the same ones from the party the night before, walked in. They were joined by 2 more. They were not here to intimidate. They were here to execute a court order. One of them held a clipboard. He stood in the center of the lobby, his voice doing all the work. "By order of the Superior Court of Washington," he called out, his voice so loud it carried all the way to the sidewalk, silencing the crowd. My mother, my father, and Mason, who had followed me in, froze. "The permanent injunction and restraining order, Case 25C8849, is now in effect. The following individuals are hereby ordered to vacate this private property, 235 Harbor Avenue, and all its surrounding walkways, immediately." He began to read the list. It was the list Riley and I had compiled. The list of every person who had attended the legacy dinner. Evelyn Whitaker, my mother flinched, as if he had struck her. Greg Whitaker, my father. Mason Whitaker. Haley Whitaker Allen. Mark Whitaker, he continued, name by name. My uncles, my aunts, my cousins, Ron Peterson, the accountant, every single person who had raised a glass, who had measured a wall, who had filmed my humiliation. These individuals are barred from this property indefinitely. Failure to comply will result in immediate arrest for trespassing and contempt of court. The lobby was dead silent. The news camera was filming the entire thing from the doorway. My mother took a step forward. Her face was no longer the mask of the victim. It was twisted with a pure, unfiltered rage. "Nora," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. You will not. I am your mother. After everything I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I was holding the thick-bound copy of the court file, the one with the timeline, the one with the forensic report, the one with her signature. I held it up, a shield between us. "No," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the concrete floor. "You do not get to speak, not anymore. From now on, only the documents get to speak, and they have said everything." She looked at the file. She looked at my face. She saw no fear. She saw no guilt. She saw only the end. She deflated. The rage, the fight, it all drained out of her, leaving a small, gray, empty woman behind her. I heard a metallic clatter. Mason. He had been holding his laser measure, the symbol of his entire fantasy. It had slipped from his numb fingers. It lay on the floor, broken. He stared at it, his face blank with shock. A moment later, Haley appeared in the doorway, her face stained with tears. She had her 2 children by the hand. She looked at me, at my mother, at the marshals. She did not say a word. She just pulled her children close, turned, and walked away, pulling her family out of the toxic wreckage her parents had created. The marshal looked at the remaining family. "You have 5 minutes to clear the sidewalk." One by one, they turned. They walked out of my lobby. My father, leaning on his cane, did not look at me. My mother, shoulders slumped, followed him. The last to leave was Mason. He looked back at the lobby, at the 3rd-floor mezzanine he had coveted. Then he turned and was gone. The independent court reporter, Janet, who had been typing silently in the corner, printed a final page. She signed it, stamped it, and handed the affidavit to Dahlia. It was the official, witness transcript of the entire eviction. A locksmith, called an hour ago, was already at the main door. He changed the high-security core for the final time. He handed me a new set of keys. Noah was at the main panel, his own new keycard in hand. "Ms. Chavez," he said, "the new security protocols are live. All old access is purged. The system is now locked to the new SOP, badge, log, and cross-reference with the state portal. No one will ever use a fake document in this building again." "Thank you, Noah," I said. Riley, who had been watching from her office, emerged, a look of profound relief on her face. She was holding her laptop. "It is done. Nora, the email just went out, to all tenants, all investors, and all vendors. I knew what it said. Ownership has been unequivocally affirmed by the court. All operations are normal. Thank you for your patience." We were back in business. I looked at the AV technician, who was standing by the dark DJ booth. "Turn the music back on," I said. He looked confused. "The party is over, ma'am." "The party is," I said, "but the building is open. Put on the jazz playlist, the one for the tenants." Music, real music, not the legacy playlist, began to fill the lobby. I pointed to the dark 30-foot screen and put up the last slide. He clicked a final button. The screen glowed to life, the harsh white light replaced by a simple, elegant black screen with white text. It was the motto I had written in my notebook years ago. "Boundaries build empires." Dahlia smiled, a real, tired smile. She snapped her briefcase shut. "My work here is done, Ms. Chavez. Send me the bill for the banner removal." She walked out. The heavy glass doors hissed shut. Outside, the crowd was gone. The news van, its story now complete, was pulling away from the curb. The show was over. Their party was finished. My eviction was complete. I stood alone in the center of my lobby. The lights were bright. The music was calm. I was not a victim. I was not a heartbroken daughter. I was just an owner. This was not the chaotic, satisfying burn of blind revenge. It was the cold, clean, documented resolution of a business dispute. It was justice, filed in triplicate. I walked to my office, the one they had designated as temporary. I sat at my desk. There was one last piece of paper. It was the new SOP, the one Noah had just activated. I picked up my pen. I signed my name on the bottom line, authorizing the new protocol, the final update. This will never happen again. I put the pen down and looked out the window at the city. The lights in the lobby began to dim, switching to their automated evening schedule. The building was quiet, secure. It was mine. It belonged to the person who had built it, not with a fantasy, but with the truth. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please drop a comment and let us know where you are listening from, so we can all connect and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.